Fox Oldies, 98.9, 105.3. A fun day Saturday morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bobo, along with our special guest, planning ahead with attorney Megan. Megan, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. On a Memorial Day weekend, I wouldn't think of anything less. Megan, give out the information for contact, if you would, please, and your the firm you're a partner with.
Sure. So my name's Megan Conroy. I'm a partner at Blustein, Shapiro, Frank, and Barone. We're located primarily in Goshen, New York. We have a great website that people can visit. It's www.mid-hudsonlaw.com, and we can also be reached by phone at 845-291-0011.
All right, thank you so much, Megan, for that. Boy, do I ever have an interesting scenario for you today. You ready?
Great. Tell me about it.
Okay, here we go. So, Uncle Joe, he goes to law firm number 1 and fills out a last will and testament. 30 days after he did that, he decided, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm not going to go with this law firm. I'm going to go to another law firm. The decisions that people make are very, very important. So here's what Uncle Joe did. He went to law firm number 2 and filled out a last will and testament. Now, according to law, from what I know, filling out a last will and testament number 2 supersedes the first one that Uncle Joe filled out. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the way it works in New York State. Every will that you complete, you sign properly, as long as it's validly signed, is going to work to revoke your prior wills. So it's really important that if you're making changes in your estate plan, you're very conscious of the order, the sequence in which you're completing that documentation. I have clients that come in every single year and change their mind about provisions. And so when they are signing new documentation as an office practice, we try to make very good notes about the changes that they're making, why they're making them, the discussions we're having. And I think any good attorney is going to do that. And that way, if there was ever a conflict between a prior will and a current will, which often happens, that's why you sign a new will, we have good documentation to show why those changes were made, that the new provisions are not accidental, they are intentional, and that's exactly what happens. That new will is going to revoke your prior will.
Well, unfortunately, Uncle Joe passed away. And law firm number 1 is, I hate to use this word, but it's true. It's screwing everything up with Uncle Joe's family. Because what happened is that law firm number 1 wants to challenge the law. So because of that reason, the judge put a hold on everything of what people should have been awarded in Uncle Joe's will. And
sure.
Yeah, and the judge only allowing monies to be distributed to Uncle Joe's attorney and property taxes of his house.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's a really unfortunate situation, but the court needs some time to parse out which will is going to be the valid will. Sometimes when a person signs a new will document, if there's any suggestion or inference that maybe someone tricked them into signing the will, they didn't understand what they were signing, someone forced them to sign a newer will can be thrown out. It can be determined that it's not valid by a court, in which case a prior will then come back into play, and that will be the will that controls the distribution of the assets. So until a court can sort out those pieces and make sure that the new will is truly the valid will, they need to put everything on hold. Sounds like they're allowing for some basic expenses to continue so that the estate can continue to be represented and there's no tax liens on the property. But that is a very sticky situation.
Yeah, it really, really, truly is. And because of that situation, Uncle Joe's family, they're not getting what Uncle Joe left them out of the estate. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's why it's so important for people to make good decisions about their last will and testament. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. I agree. It's a very important document, and certainly people can change their minds. Sounds like in your example, maybe not only the provisions of the will were revised, but also the attorney that Uncle Joe was using. Maybe it wasn't a good fit. And this is something that's really key. When people meet with an attorney, it shouldn't feel uncomfortable, right? Sometimes people get a little bit nervous. I'm sitting with a lawyer and I'm not sure how these things work, but your attorney should make you feel comfortable. They should invest time and energy into learning about you and your family, and you should really be working on building a relationship with the attorney because you should feel comfortable going to them if you do have any changes. If you've met with an attorney and you feel like you just didn't click, it's not the right person or relationship for you, then you should absolutely feel comfortable moving on to a different firm or a different attorney because that relationship between you and your attorney is very important.
Absolutely, and it pays to really make good, great decisions. Now, what your firm offers are what you call workshops. And and the last workshop you had, and it's for free. And how long does the workshop last?
Our workshops typically go a little over 2 hours.
Wow.
They used to be much longer. Yeah, they used to be much longer because this specific topic, right, estate planning, estate administration, and we even talk a little bit about Medicaid planning in our workshops, that's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. We want to make sure that people attend. They feel like they're getting sufficient information to start the planning process. So it's a longer workshop. It's about 2 hours. We try to reserve a lot of time at the end as well for questions because generally we will find that there's a lot of questions that come up as people listen in. But as you're pointing out, our last workshop was completely full. We had to bring in additional chairs and kind of squeeze people in all over the place. We always try to accommodate those people who are really interested in the topic and want to come in. But the room only allows for so many people once we're jammed in there.
So how do people find out about your workshop? Is it on your website?
It is. It's on our website, which is, like I said before, mid-hudsonlaw.com. There's going to be a little tab up towards the top right that talks about free workshops and events that are available, and all of them are going to be free. Most of them are open to the public. Some are reserved for existing clients. But the workshop that really gives you that estate planning basics, the next one that's going to occur is on Tuesday, June 24th. Those ones all start at 3 p.m., and then we go right around 5 o'clock. We'll sit together. We typically try to have some snacks in the room for people who get a little bit antsy and hungry.
Yeah. Sure.
But, yeah, it's a good time. Every other month I host them. So, like I said, the next one's on June 24th.
And you request that people go to your website and sign up for this workshop because seating is very limited, correct?
That's absolutely correct. People should RSVP in advance. That way they can secure their seat. If the next workshop is full, we'll direct them to the following workshop thereafter. And like I said, we try to do them every other month. Every so often we'll record the same material so that we can make it available as a video, some video content on our website as well. So I think that there is one from last year up on the website in video format, but certainly some of that information has been updated to the 2025 figures. And so we recommend in-person attendance. And like you said, you got to call up or sign up online in advance to secure your seat.
Now, the law in New York is always changing with last will and testaments and trusts, is it not?
Sure. Yeah, we see little bits and changes every single year. Some years it's more extensive than others. I would say between last year and this year, there haven't been too many major changes, but certainly there are certain things we can count on changing every year, such as estate tax exemptions, gift tax exemptions, Medicaid numbers, things like that. We'll see tiny changes each year.
Wow. I mean, there's so much to keep track of, and your law firm that you're a partner with is really crossing the T's and dotting the I's. You guys are absolutely wonderful. How about your contact information again, please?
Sure. So the good phone number for us is 845-291-0011. And then, like I said, we have our website, which is mid-hudsonlaw.com.
And what are your office hours, Megan?
Yeah, so we're typically open to the public Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We have a few holidays sprinkled in there, such as Memorial Day right here ahead of us. But otherwise, we're pretty much general office hours. We do have staffing there around that time as well. So we typically have staff available from 8 in the morning, sometimes until maybe 6 or 7 at night. But really, I would say for public use, we try to limit it to 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
All right. You know, we were talking what I consider to be something very, very simple is a last will and testament. But I guess things get a little bit more complicated when you go for a trust, does it not?
Well, I think that they serve different purposes, and trusts are more comprehensive. And so there is a little bit more complexity there, but it's because trusts will do more things than a will do.
Oh, really? Such as what, Megan, may I ask?
Sure, absolutely. So trust planning is really appropriate for people who tell us that their goals are to avoid probate, which is the court process by which a court approves a will. So your will goes through probate, and it controls individually titled assets. And sometimes people want to avoid that altogether because, as you described with Uncle Joe, right, it can be a long, drawn-out proceeding. It can mean that family members are waiting a very long time to be able to access assets. If the court wasn't wise enough to permit those property taxes to be paid, it would mean that maybe there's no funds to cover property tax expenses and things like that. So we typically find that sometimes people hear about probate, and while it's not inherently a bad thing, they get a little bit nervous about these horror stories that do crop up here and again, right?
Oh, boy,
so now when they tell us that probate is something they'd like to avoid, typically we start to consider trust planning as an option. Usually that's going to be coupled with other goals, though, like asset protection for themselves or for maybe other family members, their beneficiaries, like their children, their spouses, things like that. Trusts give us a better guarantee of meeting those expectations, achieving those different goals, all while avoiding probate.
So I guess Uncle Joe should have filled out a trust, huh?
It sounds like he probably should have. You guys would have been in a much better situation if Uncle Joe had done that.
Wow. And we never know how much time we really have left here on this planet. And unfortunately, Uncle Joe passed away. And he really couldn't do anymore, and it was just left up to his attorney. Apparently, he did not have a trust filled out, and it's just a last will and testament.
Right. And so what we're seeing in Uncle Joe's example is that it is passing through the estate is passing through the probate process, and as you're pointing out, we never know when things are going to become more difficult, right? That could be that we pass away. We also, a big part of estate planning is planning for disability, the inability to manage our own affairs, a declining health, and we don't know when that's going to happen either. So it is very wise for people to, while they're healthy, while they have capacity, they should put a good, solid plan in place. And then, as we've talked about several times already, just maintain that plan over time, make tiny tweaks and updates. Sort of the largest amount of work, the biggest hurdle is getting that initial plan in place. And then once that happens, it's very easy to maintain the plan over years. So the earlier it gets done, the better off you are.
And you know, the thing about Uncle Joe, and this is what I don't understand, is that Uncle Joe's law firm that he went with, the second one, they still have to pick an executor of his last will and testament. Now, what does that mean? Who do they pick from? Is there a list?
So in a will, typically the person creating the will, known as the testator, is going to choose people that they trust. Maybe it's family members, maybe it's dear friends, or if they don't have individuals that they feel like they want to burden with that task, maybe they'll choose a company, a financial institution often, who can serve in the role as executor. Now, we have to be careful about who we choose as executor because it's a lot of work. You're putting that person through a lot of paperwork, a lot of phone calls, a lot of running around. And while the expenses associated with administering the estate typically are borne by the estate, the estate pays for those things, the executor would still have so much work ahead of them that you only want to choose people that are appropriate for that position. And it really, unfortunately, it's putting a lot of burden on them.
Oh,
so in a will,
sure.
Yeah, and in a will, you're going to see that the testator creates a list of people that they think are appropriate to serve as the executor, that although it's a burden, they might be up to the task. And so usually what we'll find is a first position, second position, and maybe even a third in case the first one or two isn't able to serve at that time. So when you tell me in Uncle Joe's scenario that the court still has yet to appoint the executor, it could be because they're still determining whether that will is valid or not, and so they don't know if they should go by the list in the second will or the list in the first will. But typically that time that it takes to appoint the executor requires a lot of understanding and paperwork by the people who are saying that they're willing and able to serve.
Oh, my. Boy, that really sounds complicated, Megan. I mean, if you don't make the right decision when filling out a last will and testament, from what I'm gathering by your examples here, it could really be a drawn-out experience for someone or someone's family, yes?
Sure, absolutely. And so to your point, when someone is creating their will, right, then typically not doing this by themselves. I don't recommend that people try to go to an online service and complete their will on their own, because the legal paperwork is one thing, but knowing what those positions are, what it is that you're truly asking people to do for you, that's going to be something that you should be relying on a professional, on an attorney to explain to you and counsel you on. There's almost no scenario where you should either online or even with an attorney sit in front of them and the person says to you, okay, tell me 1, 2, 3 who you want as the executor. It should be more of a discussion. Do you understand what an executor does? It's a lot of work. Are the people that you're considering up to the task, right? Are they older? Maybe they're in failing health. That would tell me that maybe they're not the best person for this position, because by the time this happens, they may say, geez, I can't do all this running around. I can't do this paperwork. I don't really understand how to use the computer. Those are all things that we should be considering, and a good attorney is going to counsel you on choosing the right people for the right positions, not just plugging names into a field.
Wow. That's, you just reminded me of something, and I can't mention the company's name, of course, but I think people will know what company I'm talking about. When it comes down to life insurance, there's an ad on television for so much money a month for your life insurance. And if you go ahead with this company, what they do is they send you a booklet for your last will and testament. And that is prohibited in Maryland. Now, you shouldn't really go fill one of these things out, should you?
No, I would say if you don't have a legal background, this isn't something that you should try to do on your own. While the paperwork itself looks very easy, very basic, right, it has greater implications that you may not be aware of. In my practice, this is all that I focus on. I do estate planning, estate administration, and Medicaid planning and applications. And it's because this area has so much depth to it. There are so many nuances and things that I need to stay on top of as a professional so that I can appropriately guide my clients, that I just don't have time to even practice in other areas. So if I dedicate 100% of my time to this field, I don't think that a layperson off the street really has the wherewithal, the appropriate knowledge that's required to try to complete their own will based on a booklet or on an online system or something like that. I think the idea, though, is very good, right? So the life insurance company sounds like they're trying to encourage people to think of their planning as a whole, a more comprehensive plan than just slap some life insurance in place and put a beneficiary on there and assume everything is good. So I like that they're encouraging people to do planning, but I don't think that a templated form is going to be the appropriate vehicle for most of their clientele.
Yeah, well, I know that there's a big box store in the area, and there's a lot of them where you could just walk in and just get a last will and testament form and go home and fill it out. That's not a very good idea, is it?
It may not be. I mean, there might be people that use that and get by just fine. So I don't want to say that will never work. It may work, but rather than leave something up to chance and not be sure at the time you purchase that templated will out of the box store whether it's going to be sufficient or not, you should probably just meet with a professional and make sure that what you want to achieve is actually what's going to happen.
So here I am as a listener to this radio station, and I'm listening to your little show here, Planning Ahead, and it started me thinking where, maybe I should look into this law firm here that I'm listening to now and maybe walk into their office and ask them some questions. And then if I decide to go ahead with your law firm, it sounds to me that your law firm is definitely great. And this is all this is all you concentrate on. So if anybody is listening to this in the audience, and I know you are, it's a very interesting subject, and you got to be very, very careful and make the proper decisions with the law firm that you go with. Correct?
That's right. You should really work with a law firm that you feel comfortable with, that you trust, and you'll know that it's the right law firm for you because they're going to talk to you about your decisions. They're going to educate you and explain things to you so that when you make these decisions, they're informed decisions. You're not just guessing.
Well, now, other law firms that do this particular type of work also do a lot of other work, too, as well. So they're not really 100% on last will and testament and trusts like you are, right?
Sure. There are plenty of great law firms that practice in a lot of different areas, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? They might be very knowledgeable and skilled in all of the areas that they practice in. But the way our law firm is structured, I have, and I'm part of, an estate planning department, and we focus on this topic area in particular so that we really can be sure that we know of the different tools that are available to our clients and we can make proper, appropriate recommendations. Our firm is actually comprised of several other attorneys. We probably have about 12 or 15 attorneys as part of the firm at this point, and not all of those attorneys do estate planning in particular, but I, myself, and my partner, Richard Shapiro, he practices in estate planning exclusively as well. So you have the two of us available to you. It's what we do day in and day out. We really know our stuff. We take pride in that. We do a lot of education in this area in particular. And then if it turns out that our clientele needs something else, like a residential real estate closing or a commercial transaction, we have other partners within the firm that can handle those kinds of matters and focus their attention there. But I practice specifically in estate planning and Medicaid planning.
Wow, that is very, very impressive. I'll tell you that right now. So let me ask you this. If Uncle Joe, going back to him again, setting the example, if Uncle Joe chose the company that he used to work for to handle the executor responsibilities of the last will and testament, what does that actually lead to? Especially if Uncle Joe worked for an investment firm, let's say.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So typically not just any company will serve in those roles. Generally, when you choose an institution, it's often a financial institution, and often they will have some kind of a trust department or a fiduciary department where they already have a system in place for serving in that role. So you're not going to want to choose just some random company that you have no idea if they have these kinds of services that they offer. But often an investment firm or financial institution will. And so if Uncle Joe selected the firm to serve as the executor, or if there was a trust in place, which in this case I know there's not, but for people who have trusts You can choose an investment firm or financial institution to serve as the trustee, very similar role as the executor. Then what that means is that that company, assuming they agree to take on that responsibility, they will serve in a professional capacity to make sure that all of the paperwork is handled, all of the assets are collected. If there are expenses of the estate that need to be paid, they are the ones making sure that that stuff is happening. They're handling the administrative tasks to make sure that Uncle Joe's wishes are actually carried out, but also that the estate itself is complying with the law, payment of expenses and taxes and things of that nature. So the person or institution that serves in that role as the executor is kind of the manager of the estate. They're running point on all of these different things that need to happen and occur. And often this is all happening over a year's time or more. It does take a long time. So typically what we'll find is that the executor position is entitled to receive some compensation for their work because it is a heavy task. So there's often a state statute that describes how much the executor is going to be entitled to receive as payment for serving in that role. And that payment, of course, is going to be taxable. They'll have to report it when they file their income tax return, but at least it's some kind of an acknowledgement for all of the work that they've done.
And that would also include maybe the sale of Uncle Joe's house, too, right?
Absolutely. When there's real estate involved, and especially if the direction is that the real estate should be sold, the executor, the person or institution in that position, is going to be tasked with, retaining a realtor to list the property and then determining when we have an acceptable offer on the property and participating in the closing and receiving the proceeds from the sale. Those proceeds then get deposited into an estate account so that all expenses and debts can be paid from those funds. And then whatever the remaining balance is, that's what can get distributed ultimately to the beneficiary.
Wow, you have really told me a lot of information, along with our listeners, too, why it's so important to make a good decision about a last will and testament and to appoint an executor of your last will and testament.
That's right. Very important, big decisions to be made. That's why the sooner you get that planning in place, while you're younger, while you have capacity, you know who the people are that you trust, the better off you will be.
Wow. I mean, that is just so incredibly important. And, Megan, if you would, please, your firm's contact information, please.
Sure. So, again, the firm name is Blustein, Shapiro, Frank, and Barone in Goshen, New York. A good phone number is 845-291-0011, and our website is mid-hudsonlaw.com.
And, it's very important, too, for people to understand about your workshops. Now, you have them listed on your website, correct? And people need to sign up for this because seating is very limited and it's free.
That's correct. Completely free, open to the public. We host them every other month. The next one is June 24th, and people should sign up in advance. Like you said, seating is very, very limited, unfortunately. You can go right to the website or call us up, and you can sign up for those workshops.
Wow. You guys are just absolutely wonderful, and I get such enjoyment out of talking to you about planning ahead because it is just so important. And for our listeners that are listening in on this conversation, really, you need to really think about what you have already done or what you need to accomplish because it's so, so important for the loved ones that you leave behind. And we never know how much time we have. That's for darn sure. Megan, I wish you and your family a very, very pleasant Memorial Day. And you're going to have a barbecue?
I think we will. If the weather holds out for us, we will be out there.
It'll be good on Sunday and Monday, but not so much on Saturday from what I understand.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, enjoy. You might want to even participate in a little Memorial Day ceremony that's local where you live, which is what I'm going to do on Monday. And
very nice.
I'm all excited about that because that's really, really cool, too. Megan, again, I thank you so much for your valuable time, and it was great talking to you and discussing this. and the importance of people making great decisions.
Thanks, Bobo. Same here.
All right. So we'll see you next time, next month, in June already. Can you believe it?
I can't, but I'm excited for the nice weather.
Me too. Megan, have a wonderful weekend and be safe.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There she goes, Megan, and she really is just wonderful, and it's a blessing to have her on the air right here. I have more of the greatest music ever recorded coming up next here on Fox Oldies 98.9, 105.3, WGNY FM.